Well, if you went to Midwest Fur Fest 2025, then I don't know what to tell you. But I've got it narrowed down to about two possibilities. Number one, you lucky, lucky dog, or cat, or fox, or panther, or fairy goat, or bird dragon, or reindeer. Well, that was a lot more than two possibilities. So I'll clump them all into one and move on to two. Don't worry, I never set foot in the convention center to spread my miasma there. Which sounds sad rather than reassuring when I put it that way. I'd wanted to go to MFF 2025. I got the hotel reservation, which wasn't easy or cheap. I got pre-registered. I packed my car, indeed, probably completely over-prepared and overpacked, considering what happened, especially since there was only room for me in the car by the time I was done. My old man said, follow the van. Don't dilly-dally on the way. Okay, enough of that vaudeville crap. The problem with telling my story is figuring out where to begin. And both the stuff that I brought and the context behind that stuff are kind of stories unto themselves. So, why don't we start with these wooden folding mini tables? Why the blazes is a furry like me bringing those along to a convention? Do I need them for a panel? No, because I'm not running any panels. Thank goodness. So, why did I have them? Well, that story isn't complete without yet another space-hogging item from my backseat. A collapsible wagon, the larger of the two that I have in here, which is just wide enough to have those two tables in them when it is all spread out. My plan on Thursday was to get settled into my hotel early, go buy a couple of pizzas from Pizza Hut, put those on the tables, and also buy a whole bunch of bottled water, which I was going to keep in yet another space-hogging item, the cooler. And yes, the cooler was meant to be inside the wagon too. So while I'm standing in line for registration at 5 p.m. on Thursday to who knows when p.m., at least I sure hope it's still p.m. by the time I get out, I would be dragging this mini restaurant behind me, offering free dinner to those other people who are in line with me. And of course, water for people with warm costumes. That is what I bought all this stuff to do, just for the first day, just for registration. Of course, I'd like to add that I have discovered that the cheap styrofoam coolers at Meijer's just are not waterproof. You dump ice into them, that ice is going to melt, it's going to leak all over the bottom of your collapsible wagon. That's why I splurged on the cooler. Unfortunately for me, I never ordered those pizzas. I never bought oodles of bottled water at Target this year. I never went to registration because I just felt too weak. The act of lugging suitcases and headpieces and props out of my car to my hotel room completely drained my energy and made my arm muscles really hurt. Now, I didn't realize at the time that I was attempting to power through the symptoms of COVID. I knew while I was driving to Chicago early Thursday afternoon that my body temperature was doing some weird things. I just could not keep warm, even with a down winter coat on and the thermostat on my car's heat set to 75 degrees. But I mistook all of that for dehydration rather than fever. The funny thing is, and this will be one of those places where you see just how hard it is to know where to begin my story. Last year at MFF, I got very badly dehydrated on my first day, and not being able to keep warm was the biggest symptom of that. I took a cold shower when I got back to my hotel room after my first disastrous day at MFF 2024, and, well, since I didn't feel hot, it didn't occur to me that I was dehydrated, at least for a really long time. And yes, dehydration can make you feel too cold under certain circumstances, not just make you feel too hot. It generally messes with your body's ability to regulate its temperature, and since I took another cold shower just before leaving home after packing my car to cool off on Thursday, I figured it was just history repeating. So my inability to keep warm this year, which was almost undoubtedly a symptom of my COVID fever, I totally mistook for dehydration. So I kept stopping at gas stations on my way to Chicago and buying the biggest bottles of water I could, which was good for me, but not in the way I would have hoped it would be. My muscles felt torn up after I did even a little heavy lifting. It was a long time before I felt warm enough. I felt quite weak and low on energy, too low on energy to get pizzas or even go to registration at all. For a while, I was thinking about going and saying, hey, I feel really weak right now. I think it might be dehydration or something. I've had a lot of water to drink, but it doesn't seem to be helping. I'm not sure that I can really make the wait in that uber long line. What was I thinking? Oh yeah, the handicap lines are intended to be for people who medically cannot make the long line. Can you put me in that? And it's a really good thing that I didn't even ask for something like that. I didn't even have that much energy. If I had, they might have recognized that it was COVID or suspected that it was COVID, and my story could have taken a drastically different turn. As it is, I'm actually glad that I never set foot in the registration or in the convention center in general. Anyhow, Thursday evening I started to suspect something else was wrong with me, but I didn't know what. Since I kept peeing out the water that I was drinking instead of retaining it, I started to worry I was coming down with diabetes or something. My family has a history of diabetes, so I started asking questions on Telegram. But of course, asking questions on Telegram is nothing on actually going to see a doctor, which is what I did right after breakfast on Friday morning. The one thing that wasn't over preparation on my part was bringing a thermometer with me, as well as some fresh batteries. I was able to tell that I had a fever over 104. Sometimes it went as high as 107 around my sinuses, even if other parts of my body were reading 97 degrees. It was a weird experience. But the fact that I had that fever told me it's time to see a doctor, so I asked Siri for urgent care centers, found one a few miles away, and drove there. They tested me for COVID and a few other things, and sure enough, I did have COVID. I knew right then and there that pretty much all my plans for MFF2025 were out the window. I'd have to have a spectacularly fast recovery to even have a chance at being at the con on Sunday, and I didn't have high hopes for that. My hopes at that point were lofting about as high as being well enough to travel home by my originally intended checkout time on Monday, which I did in fact make, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We haven't shown all the items that I was bringing along with me for Midwest Fur Fest. There were the wagons, there was a cooler, 2 small folding tables, and that's not enough to cover the trunk, the back seat, the passenger seat, and the 3 footwells of a standard-sized sedan. Don't worry, though, we'll get there. The passenger side front footwell was taken up by my backpack, which had my laptop and a whole bunch of other electronics. The back seat was occupied with a portable freezer, which was intended to keep my PCM packs for my easy cool-down vest frozen. A large investment of both size and money for such a small benefit that I never actually reaped. Although I ended up using that portable freezer as a portable refrigerator, it is adjustable, and I used that to chill a gallon of milk that I bought after I got diagnosed. That gallon would not fit in the hotel's provided fridge very well at all. You know, sometimes being overprepared gives you resources to deal with a completely different situation that you never saw coming. That and a smaller suitcase containing my toiletries and pieces of my costume, plus the second wagon, which is smaller and more maneuverable, devoured most of the back seat except for the footwell. Believe you me, I'm getting to that. The trunk was consumed by a large suitcase containing my clothes, a badly chosen positioning for the tables that consumed more room than it really should have, and some miscellaneous boxes, like a box of tools and spare parts for my fishing gear props, and that devoured the rest of the trunk. And I think the last thing that I haven't covered is the backseat footwell. And that is so symbolic of overpreparedness in the wrong directions and underpreparedness in the right directions. So here goes, ladies and gentlemen, and I assure you there's a logical explanation for what you are about to see. Yes, really. A few dozen folding umbrellas. at a con where the forecast literally called for snow well in advance and no temperatures above freezing the whole con, and that forecast was accurate. I can explain. You see, it's become my thing to give away umbrellas to content creators and other furries that I like, often mailing them to P.O. boxes listed in their channel descriptions. My thinking was, and is, that fursuits are uber expensive pieces of wearable art, often even more costly in terms of their sentimental value, and getting rained on generally doesn't do them any good, so an umbrella can be a really practical and aesthetic gift. I think this habit of mine more or less started when I found an umbrella at Meijer that I thought kind of matched Odin Wolf's color scheme, and then it snowballed from there. I've given one to Caffeine Fox, one to King Haffy. I think there's still a live out there of King Haffy unboxing it. I've given one to Coyote Keto. I'm trying to find a way to give one to Toph from Toph's Universe. Probably could have handed over in person at MFF if I hadn't gotten COVID, but anyways. I've given one to Starberry Dream and another one to her boyfriend Weir Eric, and it turned out the one I gave him was too long for him to pack it for his return trip from MFF2025. I am so sorry about that. I even talked about giving one to Mango Foxy in a comment on YouTube from my other channel. For a lot of these umbrellas, I had specific intended recipients. Take this long yellow one, for example. This was intended for Finn the Panther, as he said in one of his videos. Yellow's his favorite. This orange one, intended for Mango Foxy. This clear pink patterned one, intended for Chi, a suitor that I've seen on Caffeine Fox's videos and on Twitter with a suit that I find and found really impressive, by the way, but who I've never met in person. This light blue and white one, Arctic Fox. Star patterned one, Astra Kitty. I was going to go to the vendor's room and just hand it over. And this green one, actually, I forget who the green one's for. Maybe it was Telluride? Anyhow, this blue one was meant to replace the one that Weir Eric had to throw away. Not that I knew whether he'd be at Midwest Fur Fest or not. Speaking of furries who I didn't know whether they'd be there or not, these big old burgundy and grayscale foldies, they were meant for telephone and radio, respectively, if they were coming. And this orange and purple one, Inky Skull, as the one and only time I've ever met Inky was at Midwest Fur Fest 2024 on Sunday, the last day. Interestingly enough, I think we bumped into each other as I was delivering these umbrella presents to Starberry and Weir Eric at the vendors area. Oh, the dealer's den. I keep forgetting what it was called. Now I finally remember. Oh, and those boxes of snacks and the fishing poles with the laundry clips on the ends. I wanted to try a variation of something I did at Motor City FurCon. If you look elsewhere on this channel and find a Fishing for Furries video, you'll get the idea. The difference is I'd planned to be doing the Fishing for Furries from the ground level rather than from a balcony, since I did ask beforehand for permission about doing Fishing for Furries over a balcony, and they said it wasn't kosher as per the venue to dangle things off of railings. Some of the most fun interactions that I have had with other furries were offering them snacks via fishing pole, and I was hoping to recreate some of that fun at Midwest Fur Fest 2025. And the icing on the cake? Remember that one skull fursuiter who carried around a box with a hole in the top with the word stickers on it, practically asking for sticker donations? I had this little rain poncho, still in its original sandwich bag-like packaging, had some stickers that I put inside that packaging, and a sticky note on the outside saying, now did it say slickers or stickers? Details. I had every intention of putting that in that suitor's stickers box if I ever ran into them. So yeah, I had plans. And all those plans went to pieces the moment the doctor stepped in and said, I have COVID. It's more disappointing now than it was at the time. Partly that's because I was too tired to be disappointed. I don't remember thinking about the panels I wanted to do or the fishing for furries at any point while I was quarantined in my hotel room. And partly it's because I was so relieved at the time that my big medical problem wasn't diabetes. COVID you get better from. Diabetes sticks with you for life. But now, now I get to see these photos and memories that everybody else walked away with. Other furries that they got to meet. The other furries who got to meet them. I I got none of that. I never got to show off my own frog headpiece with its throat view visibility and its mechanized ribbit throat. I never got to give away a single slice of pizza or bottle of water or snack or umbrella or anything. It's easier to care about things like that when you aren't as feverish. It's also easier to remember all those plans. It's kind of a blameless act of nature that I got sick when I did. Maybe if I'd gotten vaccinated sooner in the year I could have avoided this, but it's not as easy as it sounds because I have allergy shots to work those vaccinations in around. But at the time, it wasn't as frustrating or saddening as it is now, and, well, that's part of the story too. Partly because I'm an introvert, staying at the hotel the whole vacation wasn't such a terrible thing. Not worth the over $200 a night that I was paying in fact, of course, but not terrible. But the really big reason why I tolerated my quarantine well was the one thing I could do with myself, the one thing I could work on in my condition to fill in the time. My furry fan game. It is called Crystal Calamity. Its plot is basically Sorcerer's Apprentice with gemstones instead of broomsticks, and I'm hoping to populate it with a lot of furry characters owned by real furry artists and suitors to try to make it into a whole big community thing. See, there's one thing I packed with the intention of giving away that was small. It was about 20 sheets of paper with 4 cards printed on each sheet. Each card had a blurb about my fan game and a request for permission to use your furry character in it. Again, I ended up using a couple of these as scratch paper to warn the hotel's cleaning staff that I've had COVID, and that was about as useful as I ever found them. The cards never went to the convention center, and in spite of the fact that I saw some good fursuits around the Spark by Hilton, I never tried handing them out at the hotel either, since I didn't want to spread what I had. Instead of raising awareness of my fan game, I ended up working on my fan game. And at this point, the first 10 minutes of gameplay is there, and it establishes the controls, a decent chunk of gameplay, the names and personalities of 2 of the playable characters, what their different abilities can and cannot do, and it establishes a little bit of the backstory and setting as well. This is something I can show. This is something that I can build off of, and who knows? The sympathy of having this happen to me might just bring more attention to my game than I ever could have gotten with those 80 cards. They're just ugly dark text on white paper. They're often cut off. I mean, seriously, why couldn't my brother have used stretch to fit when printing these? But this, the story of a furry who came down with COVID symptoms while traveling and never made it to the con despite paying for the hotel, paying for the pre-registration, and going through all the trouble of getting there. That is a story that gets a lot of attention. I mean, I already got permission from Starberry Dream, ZK Art, Beta Ada Delota, Generic Purple Protogen, Inky Skull, Caffeine Fox, Weather Dog, Stizzy, and Gibbers, and some furries who I know a bit more personally to put their sonas in the game. Some as NPCs, some as guest star playable characters. I've got plans laid out for about 7 different zones with 2 or more often 3 areas each. Let me play their background music since that's the closest thing I have to concept art for them so far. Kunzite Caverns, which most of the prologue takes place in, which has a crystal maze, a quarry, and a set of tunnels that are choked with poisonous gas as its 3 different areas. The crystal maze and quarry are mostly written, but I don't have characters for the quarry. Emerald Estuary, a green grass riverfront town and beach home to apprentice earth mages. The riverfront, beach, and the river itself each constitute a different zone, and all 3 scenarios are mostly written. Pearl Palace, a castle with an artificial storm set up in the eastern sky by air mages so that a big party held there in the afternoon will have a rainbow as part of its decor. The gardens outside the palace are meant to be one of the earlier parts of the game, and their scenario is more or less written. The inside, Depending on who allows me to use their characters, I could have some difficult choices about who the royal family can be. I'd love to make telephone and radio the royal couple, though. Don't know if I'll add a dungeon or barracks or ramparts as a third area for Pearl Palace or not. This one used to be called Opal Orchard, but Pearl Palace is cooler and more to the point. Plus, I realized you can't taunt a player by having a big old castle in a video game as one of its settings and then not let the player go in the castle at some point. Diamond Dunes, a desert with an oasis town where apprentice water mages live, a sandy, large wasteland, and eventually some haunted pyramids function as the three zones here. The Oasis Town's plot is mostly written, but I could use another character or three for it. Hot Hessianite. A volcanic area with a village full of steampunk machinery where apprentice fire mages live, a bubbling, flowing lava field with some rare minerals growing in it, and a blazing caldera where a fire elemental queen holds court are its three areas. Of these, only the village's plot is written, and even then, there's definitely room for more characters. Topaz Tundra, an icy mountaintop area with a mysterious mansion. No one knows who lived there or why or when, but they're expecting plenty of magical artifacts to be in that mansion since no one could maintain a mansion atop an icy mountain without lots of magical help. Though the four mage guilds are disputing who has the right to collect and research those artifacts, well, it could be a pretty crazy plot. The inside and outside of the mansion are two of the zones, and a haunted wing of the mansion is intended to be a third zone, and tentatively I'm thinking it'll be the location of the final boss. The mansion's non-haunted inside will likely be excellent for strong and formidable-looking furries who try to bully their way into claiming territory for their guild. There's plenty here that has not yet been written. Finally, we have Ruby Rainforest, and no, that is not a pun on the defunct Rainforest fursuit convention over on the East Coast. Ruby Rainforest is, as the name implies, a rainy jungle. It's got a ruined city in it, it's got a real deep forest in it, and it's got a ruined and haunted temple complex as its final zone. Which kind of mages are going to be here and why, I haven't yet decided. This zone has a lot of it that's unwritten at the moment, which kind of means it has a lot of potential. I was going to be calling it Ruby Ruins for a while, but then I decided Ruby Rainforest sounds a little bit nicer, and there is more to this zone than the ruins. If you know what role you'd like your character to fill, let me know. There's plenty of chances for me to rewrite things, adjust plans, and slot in more characters. Yeah, this whole thing turned from me telling my story about catching COVID and not being able to go to a convention into a pitch about my fan game. But honestly, working on this fan game kept me sane during my quarantine. And it is me participating in the fandom, albeit in a very insulated and siloed off way. Until now, maybe? There are tons of possible character roles. There are some businesses in the Earth Mage Rivertown that need owners, cashiers, salespeople, waiters, etc. There's an outfitters that sells adventuring gear, a formal attire shop, and a cafe at the very least, and I might be adding other shops too. There's castle guards and servants, mages in any one of the four guilds, background characters in any of the established scenarios, characters in the scenarios that I've not yet established. The list goes on and on. Let me know if you'd like me to include your character, and if you have a role you'd like your character to have, let me know about that too.